Hey guys, what's up? This is Nick from Nick's Listening Space. So today's video is going to be a little bit different because I promised myself I would never do these types of videos on this channel, but I see a lot of these comments within the hi-fi community, and it's something that I want to address and talk about because, I may be perhaps one of those people that perpetuates this product, right? And that is Chinese hi-fi or China hi-fi or CHiFi or whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to try to make this a political discussion, but it's one of those things where people do talk about ethics and a lot of these things as it relates to Chinese-based companies. And it's sort of hard to look at any one government and say that they're bad. I think that we live in the 21st century in 2025, and as an American, our government has sure as shit done a lot of things not so nice. And so this discussion about Chinese hi-fi is always brought up time and time again, or rather Chinese hi-fi is frowned upon or shunned or looked at as a inferior or crappy product. Passion for Sound just did a video where he went to Shenzhen Audio, where he got to review a ton of products and just be a participant in the event. And it was one of those things that I think if you are undervaluing Chinese hi-fi right now today, you are completely doing a disservice, because whether you like it or not, Chinese hi-fi manufacturers are accelerating rapidly and getting better with every piece of equipment. And, going back to my first topping product to, my most current topping product, I myself feel like their products have gotten better. I think that the quality has gotten better. The early first topping DAC I ever had, to me, felt like an old school piece of equipment, rather like this metal chassis with like exposed screws, and it just had this ruggedness to it. Comparing that to my most recent topping DAC, the D50 S, it's like a completely different product line, right? And so I think that when you start off in this hobby, especially as somebody new, it is a question whether or not you should go out and drop $10,000 on a full system. I never once in my life dropped $10,000 on a complete system build out, right? I was way too much of a tinkerer, way too much of an audiophile to ever be sold or prescribed a solution for my needs. Rather, I was always going to be the guy to want to go out and explore and try different things. Like from the first time I started hearing different amplifiers or different sets of speakers, I realized like, wow, there's so much more here. And so I think that Chinese hi-fi has a place in the industry as the perfect starter setup. And I think you can look at the system behind me that is a pairing of a couple different Chinese hi-fi products, a Blue Sound node, and a turntable, right? You got $2,000 worth of electronics there powering KEF LS50s. Now, I could definitely go out and buy a $2,000 integrated amplifier that has a built-in DAC and all of that. And that might sound better than this, right? But you're going to get a device that you spent $2,000 on, and then if you wanted to tweak the sound of it, or you felt like it needed more of this or less of that, you're then stuck starting all over again from scratch. And I think that when you spend time in this hobby with different pieces of equipment, you begin to realize what pieces of equipment will do what to the sound characteristics. And so then it becomes much more easy or simpler to then just go out and then say upgrade your DAC, right? I think that you start here because then it allows you to discover what you like. And I think that that is a very powerful thing. In the past, or when we existed in a world with much more expensive stuff, you were then having to go to a dealer and then put all your faith and trust in their selection. I think everybody falls on different spectrums. I think a lot of people want to just have a good system and they don't want to think about building it out, or they want someone just to tell them what to buy. I think that with my channel and with many audio reviewers, our brand, or what we're trying to do, is show the value in these products. And it is ultimately up to the viewer, you, the audience, to determine, like, do I want to spend like only $200 on a DAC? It's for the audience and the viewer to ultimately determine what to do with your money. When I make a review video, I'm thinking about a vast world out there and many different people and many different use cases, and everybody has a different priority or a different budget for their system. And so I think that that's really important to consider when we review these affordable products. And I think the money that you can save by building out an affordable setup with these CHiFi products is then going to allow you to then become an informed listener. It's going to allow you to develop an ear for what you like. And then I think in that course of that time, you can then save up for a much better system. And there's just a greater flexibility here. And so, I just don't really understand or know where this vicious criticism of a lot of these Chinese products comes from. I think you have a lot of people sitting there with their $20,000 or $30,000 rigs, and there's a lot of reviewers out here making great videos on these affordable DACs or these affordable amplifiers or affordable speakers. And you very rarely or seldom ever see a comparison between an $8,000 DAC and, say a $1,000 DAC. You're never going to see a reviewer make that comparison, because I think what you're going to find out probably is that $1,000 DAC comes awfully close to the $8,000 DAC. And the difference is going to be marginal. And it's the way that this hobby works is the performance you get is going to be an uplift when you spend more money, but it's always a question of how much better is it? If this DAC costs 10 times what this cheap one costs, does it sound 10 times better, right? And I think those are the kind of comparisons that people try to avoid, because perhaps it's not a fair review to make to begin with. But yeah, this is just a bit of a rant, I think, about these China products. And, I think over the last couple months or so, I've been digging my feet into these affordable range of products. And overall, I've been pretty impressed with what I have heard. I just don't know what else to say about that. But I think, or rather, I would encourage more people that are hating on these products to go out and try them for yourself. And I think lastly, I will say this, my goal with this review channel, or many audiophiles that make content on YouTube, our goal is to grow this hobby. I think it needs to be stated. It has to be said that this hobby is primarily propagated by older gentlemen ranging from 50 to 70. I know from my channel metrics that a majority of my audience is of the ages basically like 34 to like age 60. And I want this hobby to grow. I want this industry to grow. I would love if we in this country or in the United States of America could continue to grow this industry. I think about the cultural relevancy of music as it pertains to the United States of America. Music from this country has traveled far and wide, and it has inspired people all over the planet. I mean, I like to believe that the United States played a major role in this phenomenon of audiophiles. And so today I question, how can we grow that? And I think if selling cheaper, more affordable Chinese-based products is going to allow younger people in their 20s, kids who are 18 years old, if it's going to allow those people to buy a product and fall in love with two-channel audio, then we've done our job, because we're going to build another generation of audiophiles. And I wish that a lot of the division and hate about affordable products would just go away, because I think other reviewers in this space and perhaps older, more experienced audiophiles just have to understand that the world is changing and the world of audiophiles is dying. And if we want to have more affordable American products, then we need to build the user base and we need to build the love for that. And I think that will translate into another generation of engineering in audio design. And, that's all great for the art of music. The way I see the world of music is that it is ever changing, but perhaps it's not surprising that music today is just fundamentally different than it was in the 70s. And so, I have no idea where the future of music goes. I think the impact that streaming has had on the art of music has been quite profound. And that's another thing that I think so many reviewers are pushing these days is streaming. Like it's the cream of the crop, end all be all. And it's just a piece of technology that could effectively change the whole dynamic of how music is produced. You have companies like Spotify that are now pushing AI-driven music on their platform. We run the risk of dumbing down this beautiful art, right? So that's another thing I'm going to always advocate for, I believe, on my channel, is to have physical media. I do think it's somewhat of an inconvenience. Perhaps streaming is a better pathway for people just getting into this hobby. But, I would love if everybody had a goal to have a physical system and physical music as well, too. But I completely understand, right? Everybody is different, and everybody has different needs. So yeah, guys, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I would love to hear what your guys' opinions are about these CHiFi pieces of equipment. Do you think I'm stupid for reviewing these pieces of equipment? So yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind, please hit that like button down below, hit the bell notification, leave a comment, thumbs up. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye, guys.